Hey YouTube, Diz here with another XCOM 2 mod video for you, and this time we're looking at adding a class to your game. So I'll start with the demo of what that looks like. Ding! So here is Squatty Gabriela Blanco, and in her soldier abilities, I get a little red screen error because I did not fully complete this mod. I just wanted to make sure that it does work. I called it a YouTube class. So that's YouTube Squatty. Added one skill to it, the Vanish skill. And you can see the little class names of the trees are named here. The description of the YouTube class right there. And that fun stuff. So how to add this to your game. And I'll also be showing you how to add it to your debug list so it shows up in the section right away. So let's get right to it. So here is my localization file, and that's what you're seeing, but let's just go to the class file. And if you watch some of my previous videos, this should be a continuation of your experience adding things to the game. And unlike my last video about adding to the configs, you won't have issues with red screens because you're just adding another item to the game, another class to the game. You're adding additional things to the game instead of replacing configurations, which can mess with things. You can make your own configuration file for this, and I'll show you how to do that for specific changes here. But for the most part, it shouldn't have too many issues impacting the game. And I even considered later, after the configuration edit video, if you watch that one, I was editing damages to weapons. It probably would just be better to add another weapon to the game with that higher damage. So it's available to you like an assault rifle, the same looking assault rifle, just one with greater damages, if you wanted to do something like that, instead of replacing the edits of the current assault rifles out there. So again, let's show you how to make this class, and we're going to start from step one, which is a new ModBuddy application, and we're going to do new mod. We're going to select default mod again, and this time let's make the class mod, simply named. And in this video, again, I'll show you how to make this mod. I won't be completing it through and through, but I'll show you what you need to be putting into it to get your results. So like the localization file, how to make the skills and how to add them to the tree sides to get the full list, where to look for the abilities, because what you're going to be doing is just extending the X2 ability class that already exists in the game, and you're going to be extending that so you can see the abilities that you want for your class, right? So now that we're in ModBuddy, we got a new class going, a new mod going called class mod. We need to talk about what files we're going to need for this mod to work. So first off, we're going to need a class file. So let's add that to the game, or to the mod here. It's going to be an Unreal script, and I'm going to call this X2 ability, because that is the class we're going to be extending, underscore class mod. Simply named, nothing special. The next couple files, a few files we're going to need. The localization file will come into play this time because we're actually going to have text facing the player. We're not just making configuration edits, we're adding a whole new thing to the game. So that's where the text that the player will see will be located. And then we're going to need a set of configurations. So first configuration file we're going to need is the XCOM class data. There's that. And what that is going to include is the actual template for the class, the ranks the class will have, so squatty, corporal, major, all those fun things, and just additional information for the mod to work in the game. We're going to leave the editor file there. We're going to leave the engine file there. We're going to need those as usual. And we're going to leave the game file there as well. And then we're going to add another file for GameData. So another configuration file, XCOM, GameData. Oops, don't want the one in there. And the reason we want that one in there is we're going to add the loadout and the debug information to the game there in this file. So what the debug information is going to do is actually add that class to your debugger so you can test it and look at it before you load it, and you won't have to mess around before you load it into your real game, and you won't have to mess around by like adding that class or going through the advanced war school or trying to recruit it or anything or develop those skills. You'll just see it out on the front end, and that's going to help us out. Then for our configuration file for actual changes we want to do to the original template, because you can't just assign numbers to things. And often enough, if you don't want to make any changes, you'll just leave the default configuration and it'll reach out to the XCOM GameData and find those numbers for you. But if you do want to make changes, and I just recommend having this file in here anyway, it's the XCOM GameData, and then make our own configuration file for this class mod ini. So those are all the files we're going to need to make this. If you want to do your own content, like your own icons and your own other things, mostly icons, or if you're trying to add different kind of animations, this video will not cover that. I have yet to really dive into the packing and unpacking, and that follow-up videos will kind of look at that and how to make adjustments to the game with the UPK files and some of the old, more wrapped up hex type files that the game uses to control various things. So now that we have all the files added to our class mod, let's start filling them out. So first things first, we have the class mod class. So let's start out by calling it what we call the file x2 ability underscore class mod, which extends the x2 ability class, and that depends on XCOM. This is actually in parentheses. XCOM game state context ability. And then I'm going to right away set up a config file for what we created, which is going to be game data class mod. And then with the semicolon. Now, why depends on? If you look at the x2 ability class, including the game files, you can see it also depends on XCOM state context ability, game state context ability. And this also extends the data set of the game, so you don't have to include that in yours because you're extending this class, which would naturally trickle down to extend the x2 data set. So cool. Back to our class mod. And again, I'm going to be showing you how to add everything you're going to need for at least this far, and getting the class added to the game, the configuration files, and where to find everything and how I got to this point. Because it's important to not just know how to do this by watching somebody else, but also to understand how to find things and then add them to your game, because not everything that I do you're going to want to do exactly. Like you're not going to add all the skills that I do or the abilities that I do, and I'm only going to be showing you one, and then showing you that it's working in the game. All these files, you'll need them. I'll tell you that right away. So you'll need all those. So next up is to actually add the x2 ability. So just like weapons, you're going to be adding a template to the game. So I'm going to search for x2 ability, and then pick on any one of these. And you can already see here are all the abilities in the game, separated by sometimes class, enemy classes, enemy types, like the ranger. Here's the ranger. And you can see in here, you have this static function array x2 data template. And we're going to need that template type. So instead of typing it out myself, I usually just snag it from one of these classes, and I go back to my ability here, and we add that function in. Here are all the abilities in the ranger template. We're not going to be using all of those. We're going to make our own, so let's just get rid of them. But these two lines, the creating of the array, which is the object you're creating, and it's local to this file, so that's what that word means. It's a x2 data template type, so you're defining what the type of the array you're creating, and calling it something, so templates. So what we're going to do is add templates. We're going to add item, and then we're going to put an ability in those parentheses when we figure out what we want to do. So the ability I'm going to add to this class is the stealth ability, which conceals you after you've been unconcealed in a battle. So I'm going to go to the Ranger's ability set, and they call it stealth. It's the first ability in the class, and then I'm just going to grab the whole thing and drop it into my class mod. So this has the amount of charges you can do as well. So that's a nice touch. And that's set right there. And we can do something like, we can override that in our configuration file by, so here's how to add a configuration to this. Do a local, or not a local, it's going to be a var config, because it's not going to be just local to this file. We're going to be grabbing it from somewhere else. We're going to do called the stealth charges. It's going to be an int because it's the amount of charges we can do. We're just going to define that, and we're going to do stealth charges 1 so we can not conflict with other classes using this, and just specifically for our class. And so then we'll just do charges, initial charges equals default stealth charges 1. And then later in our config, we'll define that to a number. So now we have the stealth ability in our class, and then let's add it also to our template. Boom. And that's how you'd pretty much have to do your class file. There's not much more to do with the class file. You can add more abilities and then, finish out the tech tree. You'll need however many abilities. There's, I think, 6 total tech trees, 6 levels of the tech tree, so then 2 abilities each. And that is how you do that. If you add these abilities to the template, I believe they just show up in your class. You don't have to actually activate it unless you set it up that way. And I'm going to start talking about how to do that by talking about the XCOM class data configuration file. So in that class file, or this class data ini, this configuration file, you're going to need to add this class mod to the game. The first thing we need to do is create a bracket XCOM game dot x2 soldier class default classes stub, and then we're going to type in plus soldier classes equals class mod. Oops, and that did not need a bracket. There we go. Now the reason I did that is because there is a default soldier class default classes class, and you can search for it. There it is. If you look at this, its job is to take all the soldier class templates and create them and add them to the game. So it's a necessary piece in your configuration. Next, we will be adding the specs of our class mod. So we're going to do another bracket, class mod, x2 soldier class template, and bracket. And in here, we're going to define your loadout of the class. We're going to define your tech tree, what level, what abilities you get at what level of the tech tree. We're going to define a lot of things. And how to find that is because it's all located just locally, already shown in X2 soldier class template. And if you open that class up, it's again another XCOM game class, you can see these configurations here that we need to define. And these var localized strings here for that template class are the player facing text. So the display name of the class summary, the name of the left ability tree, and the right ability tree name titles, and then nicknames you can add as well. We're going to focus on these only. So back to our config file, we're going to want to take all of these config name, or these, all these right here, the configurations. These two we will ignore for now, but we will make this allowed weapons. I'll show you how to do that. And again, let's go back to our class data. Drop these in here. And we're going to replace all of these with a plus sign. Get rid of that. And the plus sign. Because these are going to just be our configuration stubs. So when our class actually gets picked up in the game, it will look to our configuration file to get some information about the class and how it behaves. So unlike your script code, the double slash doesn't do comment out. It's actually a semicolon that comments out in the config files. So you can leave these extra text there, and just you can put other text there, here, num and dec, adds class to game deck. And these two, the num and force deck and num and deck, those are just to get picked up the game. And you can always just search for stuff, an entire solution. So find all, and you can see how it's only found 4 for that exact thing. And you can go there, and there's a XCOM game state headquarters that uses num and force deck. And basically when it goes through the decks, these templates in the game, it just picks up on it and uses that number. So add array to track class distribution, and it has something to do with the class distributions and how many times they show up. I don't have a 100% insight on what those do, but they do have to be set so they can spawn in the game naturally. So let's go back to that, and I'm just going to leave it like this. The icon image, you can add whatever you want. The squaddy loadout is just a name. So this, I'll just call it squaddy class squad. or CMod. Here, I'll just call it Squatty CMod. That's what I'm going to call it now. Guaranteed, that's it. CMod. And there's multiplayer only. If you recall back in the class template, so you can tell from here like what these what's going to be assigned here. So ints are again are numbers, whole numbers. Strings is a set of letters. So it could include numbers, but it's going to be in parentheses. And here is a bool, which means it's either a yes or no, 1 or 0. So again, we'll go back to this and make multiplayer only a 0 because it's not multiplayer only. We want it in our game. Side credits per kill. So we won't use that because my class will be a primary close range pistol sword with some stealth abilities. Kill assist per kill. That I think defaults to 4. And then there's a description that we pulled from the template. And class points, I believe, also defaults to 0.4. But again, not too important there. So what are we going to do with icon image? Where do we get that? Well, I would always suggest to just kind of search for it again. And then dig through what's returned and kind of maybe pick up on some wording that can help us find an image that defines your class, so we don't have to actually make our own. I won't be showing you how to make your own images and wrapping them up in this video. We're just going to find one. So here, template, icon image, UI perk Overwatch. So we'll just use that. Nothing special. We'll have our icon for the class look like the ability Overwatch. And there's that. And lastly, we're going to want to define what weapons we want to allow for this class. So that is allowed weapons equals, and then you have to define slot type, and that's going to equal invin slot primary weapon type pistol as its primary, and then my second allow weapon, I'm going to allow a sword in my secondary slot. And I'm just going to copy what's here. And wrap this up. Secondary weapon. And because this is a configuration, you can go into all configurations for the game and you can find these exact lines. You can see other classes and their configuration. It's in the default class data.ini, and you can see where these images come from, force deck, and this, you know, what's this loadout, Squatty Ranger. You can look at whatever one you want, really, and then that will give you that. And then the next part is also tied to that, this default class data, and it involves your ranks as a squatty, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, and we're going to snag right from this as well. So what we're going to do is start with the squatty rank. So I'm just going to label it. And then I usually just look at the game data. It's already out there. And kind of piece things together. So I want to find where stealth is. So here I'll just grab soldier ranks, ability, stealth. So copy that out. And again, that's corresponding to this ability, stealth, that we're adding to the game. And you'll have to do this for pretty much every ability that you add. And then you just want to define where it goes on the tree. And then back to here, because you can see how there's 2 abilities on this tree. At Squatty, there's only 1. So we're going to ignore the second ability here. And you can see sword slice. This might be a better ability to have first as a sword wielding person, considering that's like one of your core weapons. But we're not, and we're just gonna close this out. And I'm gonna zoom in some more so you can see that here. And close this out to parentheses. So here's our parentheses, and then we're gonna close out that ability tree with a parenthesis. And it stinks that it doesn't show you exactly how to, like if you have an error, if you're missing a parenthesis, but just keep your eye on that. And then we'll do the stat progression, like here, where we're going to do the stat progression of stealth. We're just going to snag it. After we're done. Comma. Then that comma ends with a parenthesis. Oddly, you can end in a comma like that. And in some different ways, you can see how different some of these things like stealth, they don't need this applied to weapon slot. But things like blade storm and using the blade, or shadow step, shadow strike, it adds to the weapon slot. And the weapon slot here, like unknown, meaning it could be to any weapon slot, I believe, and then this one specifically on the secondary weapon. So if you change the, you just be aware of what weapon slot, what weapon's in, and what is going to be, use this item, because the secondary weapon will be your sword for blade storm. So very specific to the sword weapon in the game. But again, I'm just going to add this A-step progression and close it off and wrap it up. All right, cool. So we got that. That's the squatty rank. So this is the INI file for our squatty template. Now, when you want to make your full-on class, you're going to need more of these. You're going to want the next rank, whatever that is. Captain, lieutenant, major, corporal, and just use this default class data as a place to find how to set this up. Don't struggle. Just grab that, snag the different types of parentheses and making sure you're doing this correctly, and then just pull it right out of the file and change like these values. Don't mess around too much with these names and stat types unless you're comfortable doing that. And I wouldn't suggest that starting out. I would just make sure the class is in the game, and as soon as the class is in the game, then you can start messing around with that. So next thing, we're going to look at the editor, and that looks fine. We have our mod package, and then we're going to look at the engine. We got our class mod, non-native packages. Let's look at the game. DLC identifier, class mod, we're good there. XCOM game data, which is going to be a file where we can actually set the loadouts for your guy. So we want to do XCOM game dot x2 item template manager. And in that class, you can set loadouts. So we're going to do a loadout specifically for this. And again, in the INIs, you can find the same type of stuff. And we'll do loadout name. And that's now going to be the same name that we put in our configuration file, which is Squatty Mod. So grab that one. There's a loadout name. You're going to want to put that in quotations. Items. And this is, again, in the INIs. Item equals pistol conventional, so CV. And that's the first item, so that's your primary. And then item number 2, and arrays start at 0. That's why I started at 0, not item 1. And items is items an S. That is an array. So that's how I know this. It's an array because of the bracket. So it's, and then those 0 and 1 are the slots in that array. And then we're going to equal item equals sword. And I believe it's also sword CV. But never fear, we could always open up our INIs and find very similar lines. So you can see, yep, sword CV. And there's the ranger class, specialist, so fun stuff. This is, again, we're making configuration files, and there are a ton of those out there. Do not hesitate to use them to your advantage and model after them. Next up, we're going to be adding, and this is a custom thing, XG strategy. And what this does is debug starting soldier classes equals class mod. We just added class mod to the debugger. So when you do debug, start debugging, and the SDK comes up, to so you can kind of quickly look into a headquarters with money and stuff built, you will have class mod in that. Awesome. I always thought that was a great addition, and it helps you figure stuff out. And then the last of the INI files that we have here is a configuration file. So let's go ahead and XCOM game .x2 ability. This is going to be the name of our class mod class, because that is our ability that we're going to be modifying. It's in that class. And then we did stealth charges. We changed it to stealth charges 1. So we're going to include that here. Plus stealth charges 1 equals, let's do 4 charges. Cool. Last up, localization files. So as you saw before, we were in the X2 ability section. Or no, excuse me. We're looking at the soldier default classes. So default classes. Apologize. Soldier class default classes. And in there, and that's not the right one. Was it this? Let's see, soldier class. So as you remember from the soldier class template, we want to grab these localized strings. So what we're going to do is we'll snag these, and just these top 4, because we're not going to be messing around with the nicknames right now. Feel free to do that on your own. It's an array. It's a string array, so you make sure to make like an array name, kind of like how we were doing for items in the game data. So this is an array, and then just set those names. like that. And I would, again, look into the INIs, and you will get the answer for nicknames. Or the localization files, I should say. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to drop these localization strings in here. And we're going to, again, clear these declarations that we have within the scripts and clear these semicolons. Instead, we're going to add pluses. Oops. And then what this is for, because we're going to have to apply these to the templates. We do bracket, and we're doing the class name, so class mod, not the file name, but actually what you're calling your class. So here's class mod, soldier classes. Not the name of the mod itself, but instead the actual soldier classes. So we call it class mod. So we're going to call it class mod x2 soldier class template. That's where it's going to be, and then we're going to call it, give it some definitions. So we're going to call it class mod for the display name. The class summary is roses are red, violets are blue. I made a class, and so did you. Cool, right? So that's that. Left ability tree title. So this is the name of the tech tree's title on the left side, and we're going to call it, let's see, for pistol focus and then a sword focus. So pistol, pistola, and pistola. And for the sword side on the right side, when I finish out my classes here, or finish out my abilities in my class here, I'll call it Blade Dancer. Sure, there we go. Cool. And then, because we did add one ability to the game, we actually have to give the template for that ability and what it does. So it was the stealth ability, and then it's the X2 ability template. Finish that bracket out. And if you look at ability templates, so we look for X2 ability template. You can find the localization files right here. And I'm not going to grab all of it. I'm not going to try to do the whole thing here. But you can see there's descriptions on most of these things. And you can change abilities colors. This is all part of, not part of the localization, but you can actually go into the ability and do some of these things. So you can see how there's different things you can do. So here you can change the background color for the icon. You can do a lot of cool stuff in the ability templates. So definitely check that out. And as well as like the weapon template and the data templates and all the templates give you what is possible in the template, and everything is pretty much based on a template. So definitely go check that out. And yeah, so let's finish this out and go back up to the localization file so we can show you in the game how it's been pulled in. Where is it? And I don't think the localization, I don't think there's a way to comment things out in the localization file, so just be very specific. And how I like to do this stuff is when I don't know where this shows up, I'll just say the name of the setting. And that'll give me a hint on where to see this specific setting. Some of them are obvious, some aren't. So save all. And if you want to save all, it's Control-Shift-S. Huzzah! Look at it save. Now we are ready to build. We'll see if the big game will build, and if it does, let's load it up and show you guys our class mod that we added to the game. And again, feel free to ask questions as you're digging through. I hope this was really, really step-by-step for you and easy to follow. That's what I've been trying to do with these videos. Not expecting you to know exactly where things are and how to do things or why I do this or that. That's why I've been trying to just be very specific and show you where I find things and what they are reliant on. So I'll just give it a second here to build. I appreciate you guys watching for this long. I hope you like and subscribe the video if I did a great job. If not, let me know what I could do better. And it's still going through the build. The first build is often pretty long, and awesome. There we go. We're good. It succeeded. The build is good. There's no errors that they can find, so we're gonna just start debugging. Start debugging will bring up the SDK. You'll have to pick your mod from the list, but if we did everything correct, and again, you don't really need to actually do anything with these unsaved games and install new campaigns. It should just be picked up in your game. Awesome, the game is starting. And we're looking for class mod. There it is. And play. Ton of great mods out there already. Go check them out at the Steam store. Ignore those red things. Those were for a different set of mods that I just have in my game, which is funny because they are on the Steam store and published, and they cause red screen errors when I load it in the configuration. So you'll get a few red screen errors because of it's not complete at this state. But so there's the icon of Overwatch. So it's not as big as it's supposed to be. There are, thanks Megan. There are better icons to use for this, but as you can see, it did pick up the icon as we wanted it to. We have the name of the class mod there, or the modification. So there's where loc friendly name comes up in localization, and if we look at the soldier abilities, we get some errors because we didn't finish it out. But there's stealth, there's a loc friendly name, the name of our class, and the description we left there. Here's the Overwatch icon again, and that's it. That's how you add a class to the game. And then you can go through these here, and it kind of just assumed things because we didn't actually fill this out and provide different icons or anything. And here's the top pistola. I think Blade Dancer was too big to fit up here, so it didn't fit there. And yeah, that's how you do it. So if you have any questions, by all means, put it in the description. I appreciate you guys watching once again. My name is Diz, and that's another XCOM mod video for you. Like and subscribe if you find these videos helpful, and I will continue putting things out there. I know there's been a lot of questions about working with like meshes and adding voice packs, so I'm going to try to do voice packs next. I have to figure out how to do these packages and stuff. I got some of the tools, but I just was kind of focusing on what's available to you right out of the box, because the packages and the UPKs there's more tools needed. So I'll go over that and how to mess with that stuff in a little later when I figure it out myself. But thanks again for watching. Diz here. Peace out, guys. Thanks.